A little slow tonight. There we go. Okay, you're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. I hereby call the Des Moines City Council regular meeting for March 31st to order. And with that, I turn the Pledge of Allegiance over to Councilmember Oxiger. I believe we may have dropped him. I'll go ahead and say the Pledge of
Looks
Allegiance.
like we lost him, yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to pause for a moment. Gene's back. Gene, just to catch you up, I did the Pledge of Allegiance. It looked like you dropped off.
Yeah, sorry. It
Okay.
just dropped off.
Not a problem. With that, I'd like the record reflect that all 7 members of the council are present. And do we have any correspondence?
Yes, Mayor, we have received a letter from John Wimpress, who recently had a favorable interaction with members of our Des Moines Police Department. And we have written public comment tonight. Toni Mills, continued failure by police oversight in internal affairs. Alena Rogers, Graft. Amanda Barron, Des Moines Animal Control, and Rick Johnson, Street Races. And Mayor Harry Willis is in the meeting to give his public comment tonight.
Thank you. So being time for public comment, I just have to read a statement, Harry, and then I'll let you have the floor. Before we take comments from the public, I would just like to remind those participants that any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or will become boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the council will be removed from this meeting. When it is your time to speak, you may turn your camera on. If you have one, after you have concluded, please turn your camera off. You have 3 minutes to speak. And Harry Willis, with that, I give you the floor for the next 3 minutes. I believe you're on mute. Sir. Oh, there you go, sir.
Hello, my name is Harry Willis. I live in Seattle, but frequent the Des Moines area frequently. Des Moines is a great waterfront community in the heart of King County. We're known for being one of the most liberal counties in the whole country. And we always like to support the current thing. Right now, the current thing is Ukraine. So my idea to show our support was to hang a Ukraine flag somewhere in Des Moines, and also get a statue of President Zelensky from Ukraine somewhere in the city. And then maybe I was thinking 2 more statues, one of George Floyd, and then one of Dr. Anthony Fauci to show our support and show how progressive we are in the county. The second booster shot just rolled out yesterday. As you saw, President Joe Biden received it yesterday morning. Being immune compromised, I received mine yesterday as well. I'm confident that Des Moines will be one of the highest, have one of the highest rates of people receiving their second booster. And to get the rates even higher and protect our immune compromised people, I think a statue of Dr. Anthony Fauci is a great idea. Same thing with the George Floyd statue to show our support and to show our support for Ukraine, and that we're not going to back down against Russia. I think a statue of President Zelensky and showing Ukraine flags all over the city will be an absolute great idea. I think this is going to make Des Moines one of the best cities in the world if we show our support to the current thing, whatever it is. And whenever the next thing pops up, I think we got to get ready to stand behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Appreciate your time. With that, I'm going to have you take your camera off, please, sir. Thank you. All right. With that, we move on to the city manager report. Michael, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a couple of items. Essentially, we're going to have Nicole kind of give us an update on Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services, but I want to frame that update in the context of COVID. And there are 2 significant issues related to COVID at the moment. One is the apparent recession of the number of infections. However, we're carefully monitoring what's occurring in Europe and elsewhere relative to any variant strains and what those impacts might be in the United States. Unfortunately, Shannon and I were talking recently, the United States passed 1 million fatalities in the last 2 years. Quite an extraordinary, horrific impact. So one thing is that we are continuing the watchword, and I appreciated the gentleman's comments, the watchword of caution and appropriate protocols to make sure that we're on the side of preventing the spread of COVID and in no way allowing that to expand in our city and anywhere for that. And the other impact of COVID is the unavailability for various reasons, which, you know, some of the macro economists and others are talking about, is the absolute constraint in terms of the workforce and in getting employees who are up and running and willing to, you know, participate in various occupations. And this is almost across the board, is that the labor force, there is a shortage relative to the supply of labor based on demand, and that affects everyone and it affects the city. So we're having some trouble with that. We've done some good hires recently to try to bring things back to normal, but we're operating under the rubric of COVID now and for the foreseeable future. With that, Nicole, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nicole Nordholm, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services. And I would like to give you an update tonight on what we have in the works for both the Parks and our Senior Services Department. So next slide, please, Bonnie. Okay, so for Parks, we're very excited to move into spring and summer and bring back a lot of programming that has, you know, not been able to occur for the last few years. So our youth soccer season will start this May 7th. We, as of this morning, we have 61 kids registered in the age 4 to kindergarten range. We have 65 kids in 1st and 2nd grade and 57 in the 3rd and 4th grade area. We are continuing our dance classes, martial arts, and dog obedience at the field house. And we're also pretty excited to collaborate with some area partners to host a STEM camp later this year and provide some more teen-focused activities. We got a lot of feedback in our Parks Master Plan update on the need to focus on teens, so we will be doing that. In addition, we've been conducting regular meetings between our Parks and our Public Works Department, and we're planning for field preparation and rentals to start soon here. We'll begin softball rentals April 10th and then work out kind of which to prioritize and with staffing capacity, what we'll be able to do. We also are planning, mapping out Camp Chaos currently for the summer, which is really great. And we are going to be bringing back multiple movies in the park. Next slide, please. We have a new staff member, Program Support Specialist Savannah Matson. She's really hit the ground running. She organized a wonderful St. Patrick's Day trivia hunt in our parks. We got tremendous feedback that, you know, folks weren't even aware of some of our smaller, harder to find parks, and it really encouraged people to get out and see what we have to offer. So this also spurred us to start a feature park highlight, which we plan in the coming months to highlight a specific park and do different, you know, activities and prompts in that park to get folks excited about what we have around the community. In addition, we will be providing a variety of different sports clinics with area partners. So we have a UK soccer camp scheduled, as well as we'll be hosting some skills clinics at the field house, and also Highline Tennis will be doing some clinics up there in the coming months. Next slide, please. This is another soccer skills clinic I mentioned. So we have a great partnership with the Rave Foundation through the Sounders. And April 14th, they will be doing a free skills clinic at the field house. As of this morning, registration is full, so it was capped at 25 kids. We will be looking to do a few additional clinics, both at the field house as well as up at Midway. in the coming months. Next slide. This also, we're bringing back our egg hunt. So the extravaganza will be April 16th down at the beach park. Right now there are 17 kids registered. We aren't capping it, but we do ask that folks register just so we have enough supplies for everyone. They'll be doing some exciting contests and activities, and the Easter Bunny will be present. Next slide. So as Michael touched on, staffing has been a real challenge for municipalities around the region. We've been very fortunate to have our HR department creatively help us with recruiting and different processing support. We also attended a career fair through the Washington Recreation and Parks Association, and Kyle Ellers, our recreation manager, has been really creative in thinking through contracting through different agencies to figure out staffing, reaching out through social media, and also, like I mentioned, the planning with Public Works and the collaboration there. Next slide. So back to the Senior Activity Center. They also have been hard at work planning for reopening this coming Monday, April 4th. All of the small programs that were offered in the past will be back up and running. So a lot of them are appointment based, hand and foot cards, a lot of the, the counselor and that type of thing. You'll need to call and make an appointment. We still are doing the hot takeout lunch, and the plan will be as soon as we're able to with Catholic Community Services, we'll work to get lunch back in the senior center. It's just a matter of King County phases in the different centers to reopen that program. Eats is still going on Tuesdays, the Eats voucher program. And next slide, please. And then, yeah, a lot of so we have a mobile health screening unit that'll be up there once a month, as well as foot care is back up and going, legal services, the insurance benefit advisors. We also, our senior advisory committee is hosting our semi-annual shredding event on Wednesday, April 27th. That will actually, it was at the marina, but we will be up at the Senior Activity Center from 10 to 2 that day. Next slide. Community gardens. So additionally, the community gardens have been a focus and a gathering space for public engagement in the community. And we're very happy to see the interest back around volunteering and beautifying our parks. So we have wonderful garden stewards in place, both at Midway and Sanju, and recently signed on for another year partnership with Forterra for the Green Des Moines Partners. So in the next coming months, we'll be organizing work parties and cleanups at the parks and encourage anyone that wants to jump in and participate. Next slide. And yeah, that is in a whirlwind, all that we are planning to do for the spring and summer. And we really are just excited to be back, bringing long-awaited programs back and bringing in new ideas and activities, and just, in a safe and intentional way, serving the community. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicole. Really appreciate the effort of everyone to try to find ways to engage our community and continue to exhibit all the safety remedies that we've tried to put in place for COVID. Mayor, the only other thing on our report tonight is to let the council know that on what's anticipated for the April 28th meeting is an update on the status of our American Rescue Plan Act funds and resources, how much progress we've made in terms of implementing programs that have been approved by the council and recommended. I think that you'll be pleased by the diversity of what we've been able to accomplish at that time, but I'll let council draw its own conclusions. But I wanted to alert you that that was coming in about a month. And with that, that concludes our report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Michael. Were there any questions of Nicole in the Parks and Recreation? Okay, I'm going to open it up. I'll start with Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, could you sort of expand on the STEM program you mentioned?
Yeah, so So the new staff member, Savannah, I mentioned, reached out. It's a Lego STEM program. And so they go into different, they partner with different parks departments, and it'll be outside at our field house. We don't have dates yet, but they've just been back and forth with when we will do it. And it'll be focused largely on for I think 12 and older, because we really want to target that teen population. And it'll just be, the science, technology, engineering, math. I'm not positive on, exact criteria, but it sounded like a really great opportunity.
Okay, I'm just going all over the map here. Apologies. Is the African theme? There's a very nice women. They have the restaurant in Tukwila. Are they coming back, or are they back? Or
they are actually, yeah, that's great. I did not touch on that. So through our VETS levy grant at the senior center, it's the African Diaspora Hub, and Novi had reached out to, I believe it's called Sage. Is that the Tukwila?
yeah,
I believe that it's called Sage. So they will start back up doing twice a month lunches up there. And then the plan is, as soon as we're back to functioning and being more in person, we'll do a lot more partnering with the Central Area Center, which is in South Seattle. And that's who our grant is. We coordinate with them. So yes, more to come on the VETS levy and the African cuisine.
okay. Two other real quick. So Sanju, is there like a sign up process for the different patches or whatever, or is it all one steward?
So Joss Johnson is the Sanju steward, and she recently, I think she started in February, reaching out to past folks that had garden plots up there. I can definitely put you in touch with her, because I know there's space, and she's coordinating how to best, delegate the plots and get people up there going.
No, because people ask me all the time, they see spots untended, but they assume that they've been taken, and they want to know if they can, take them over. Okay, one last thing. Is there any kind of suggestion box on the website, or parents will make suggestions about programs for the future? If they want to make a suggestion, how would they do that?
I would say, they're welcome to email the parks general email or myself. As soon as we're starting back into the field house, they can talk to someone in person. But for now, probably the best way would just be to email us.
Okay. Sweet, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Steinmetz, I believe you had your hand up, and I saw you, Councilmember Netting.
Yes, I did. I've got about 4 things that I wanted to ask you about, so I hope it doesn't take up too much time. But I didn't see anything about T-ball or coach pitch over the summer, and these are really the entry-level baseball stuff that smaller kids get involved in. Are there any plans to do so this year?
Yes, so there are. Kyle Ellers, our recreation manager, has been in touch with Skyhawks, and we are planning to do, I believe, T-ball with Skyhawks. We have some things, their schedule is out, and they're just coordinating when that'll happen. But yes, we do plan to offer as many sports as we can.
Okay. Where's Camp Chaos going to be held? And if it's not down at the beach park, how can we help you to get it back down there?
That's a great question. We're still in the planning phases, but it will most likely be at the field house, just due to the fact that it might not be to full capacity this year. But the beach park would be a lovely place to have it.
Yeah, it was very successful down there in the years my kids did it, and I think that would be a good goal to get it back there. Anything that we can do as a council to help you get it back there, we'd be happy to. Next are, I didn't see any trips for the seniors. Is that a COVID issue?
So they, right now they are working just to get the programs in the activity center back up, just the smaller programs, but they have been talking through hiring a driver and with the VETS levy grant funding, and then starting slow with, going up to the central center that I mentioned we partner with, but definitely lunches and small trips, all of that, with safety in mind, will be planned for the near future. Yes.
Okay. And then just to follow up on what Councilmember Harris was talking about, the various plots, you said that somebody was the coordinator at Sanju Park. Do they have a phone number where if somebody sees a plot, they can look on the website, get the phone number, contact that person? What's the process for finding out about plots in all of the community gardens?
So for Sanju, her name, like I mentioned, is Joss Johnson, and her email is friendsofsanju@gmail.com. I can send you all of this information, but she has a process for reaching out to the past plot owners and then also recruiting for new ones. So it might not be the best advertised plan, but she definitely is right now, this last month or so, in the process of getting people back up there. So I can email you all that.
Let me encourage you to try to get that information on the website so that if somebody wants to find out, they can find it, essentially. Because that's the kind of stuff that the public goes and looks for. If they can't find it, they get frustrated. And I think that's one thing we can do to really do that. I think it's great. Let me congratulate you on your promotion. To be head of Parks and Recs. I think that's fantastic. We need somebody who's going to take the bull by the horns and get it back to where it was, because we had a great program in this town, and I know that there are a lot of factors that went in to what has happened to Parks and Recs. But I think it's great that we're prioritizing that again, both in terms of staff and hopefully we will in terms of budget as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Nutting, and then I'll get to you, Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, I've just got two really quick questions, and I'll shoot them at you at the same time, and you can ask to repeat if you want. On the extravaganza, are we dividing that up into age groups, and are they signing up under age groups? And then on the senior center, I forget if it was a card game or a dice game. I'm sure now that this is going to be out there that we're opening up the senior center. We're going to start receiving more emails about this the competitive bridge or something like that.
Bridge, yeah.
I'm not familiar with the game myself. So anyways, those are my two questions, and thank you.
Yeah, so for the egg hunt right now, they are not dividing it by ages. They're having people give their age when they register. So depending on how many we get, we might divide it up. But for now, it's just going to be one hunt. And then for the bridge, as they're reopening for the smaller organized card games, bridge will be one of those. I'm not positive on if the large group that wanted to utilize the center will be back. I think they found Kent to host them currently, but we're not opposed to just as things kind of slowly go back to status quo, revisiting that.
Nicole, I'd like to add to that, if I may, Mayor. I guess one thing, we try to give you specifics as to actions that we're anticipating or that are being taken. And I appreciate all the questions and the comments, but I want to let you know, there has been no playbook. There is no charted process for dealing with COVID. So we are trying in the best way that we are able to respond to the needs we know are out there. We know the desires of the community to engage again. We respect that. But as I said, there's a number of complicating factors. One is prevention of the spread of COVID. Second is having appropriate staff in place. Third is making sure the protocols are followed that create safety for everyone. So I think Nicole's going to do a great job. I want to acknowledge Susan did a fantastic job while she was the Parks Director. And but once again, we stay in touch with other municipalities, with other agencies to figure out what's going on. We work with Highland School District, but nobody has a playbook. Just please keep that in mind.
Thank you, Michael. Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah. So this doesn't have anything to do with the Sanju Park, but I was wondering about Mary Gay Park, and I know the vegetable garden is managed by a group. The orchard over there, who manages the orchard and the care of the trees? I mean, that's kind of a cool little spot, and there's, you know, and if we don't have an answer tonight, that's okay. You can get it to me later. But I was thinking about that when I was driving by the other day, the apple trees and kind of the care of those, and I thought that'd be kind of a neat place for folks to kind of gather and, you know, and hang out there. But anyway, but what I just have really a statement, and thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing to get parks and seniors and these programs back to some form of a new normal. And we don't, you know, to Michael's point, we don't know what that is, and that's true across, believe me, across a lot of organizations. There's a new normal that we're learning, and so thank you for taking that challenge on. Congratulations on your promotion, and you know we'll get back, and we'll get back to whatever that is. And I'm sure to Councilmember Steinmetz's request, we'll be back to a very great and robust new program. And so thank you for doing that. And it's a heck of a challenge. And to, again, echo his words, I'm sure that council will be as supportive as what's, you know, possible for us and what's in our lane. So thank you very much. Thank you to the entire staff for that. Big deal.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. I see the three of you with your hands up. I'm going to go with Councilmember Oxiger, then Deputy Mayor Buxton, and then one more pass for Councilmember Harris.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Nicole, for your efforts to reestablish the program. I am curious, though, about the hiring process. I understand the difficulties, but as far as I've been monitoring, I've only seen that we've been advertising for soccer referees. What are we doing to hire the necessary staff, the rec level 1, rec level 2, rec level 3 people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the plan right now, yes, the soccer, both ref and coach positions are posted. And the idea would be a lot of those folks, as they have in the past, would help with some of the field prep and then potentially Camp Chaos. And so right now, our staff, Kelsey Cole, who runs the camp, is working on the job postings for camp. And then just like I mentioned, social media, word of mouth, a lot of it is just bringing back past folks that had worked, 2-3 years ago before the pandemic started. But there is just still kind of the struggle to get people that want to return or that have the openings to work the different, temporary positions.
Okay, well, I'm hearing from constituents that are saying they're interested in working with the Parks Department, but they're not seeing the jobs available. And Federal Way, for example, has been advertising since January. The cities around us have all been advertising for a couple months now. I mean, are we in danger of not being able to fill the positions because people that would naturally gravitate towards working for the Des Moines Parks Department have been snagged by other jurisdictions?
Council member, let me make a comment about that. I think it's dangerous to say jurisdictions around us are doing this or that. We need, if you want to present some specific information, we can look at that. But I know that Nicole and Susan previously were in touch with other rec departments throughout the region, kind of staying up to date with what they were doing. So I just encourage you for the specificity as opposed to a generality.
Okay, well, it's not a generality. CTAC has 24 pages of programs that they've got going on for this summer, and they've been advertising, I believe, since February. Kent has 48 pages of programs scheduled in their Parks and Rec guide, and Federal Way has 36. And Federal Way, I know, has been advertising since the 1st of January for these people. So as far as specifics, those are some that,
And let me remind you, and I don't want to be argumentative and I want to be respectful of what you're saying, but I do want to remind you that in the city of Des Moines, in cooperation with our South King Fire and Rescue and our utilization of our Emergency Operations Center and protocols and careful, diligent following of those, knock on wood, we've had no fatalities in city government and no serious hospitalizations. Can't speak for the other municipalities, but we intend to maintain that to the best degree we can. And I know that Nicole and her staff are doing everything they can, put us in a strong position to reopen facilities as we're available and provide programming to that extent.
Yeah, and I can just jump in and add that for the soccer positions, they've been posted for a while, and we do, Kyle Ellers, our recreation manager, as I mentioned, has been in touch with the area jurisdictions as well as just different past staff. So we should be set. I mean, I shouldn't say we should be set. We will do our best to have soccer staff and recruit those needs and then move on to the summer camp. And so we just have to, at this time, do our best to recruit staff. I mean, we are a much smaller city than, Kent and those others, but we are doing our best with HR's help as well as with just social media and past staff to recruit at least, who we need to successfully run the program. So.
Is that your questions, Councilmember Oxiger? For now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Along with a couple of my colleagues, I'm really impressed that these programs are ramping back up for the summer. I'm excited for the summer. I'm excited to hear what you guys have going. I know you work really hard, so thank you. One thing I've always been impressed with is this senior program, the lunch program that we have. And so that we're Monday through Thursday. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable to me. It's pretty cool. You seniors can go get a lunch up at the senior center Monday through Thursday, and it used to be inside. Could you clarify a little bit about that, Nicole? The lunches are free, correct?
They are free. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And is there an age limit? And do you have to register? Do you have to do anything ahead of time? Can you just walk up? Can you clarify about that?
Sure. So yes, you can just walk up. The age preference is 55 and older. It's a free lunch with a $5 suggested donation. So a lot of folks do donate if they're able to. The staff up there does like to track if folks are willing to give, name, contact information, age, that kind of thing, just to track for demographics for King County and for the grant and that kind of thing. They do like to track who's coming, but they do a really great job of having the numbers of both food that's delivered as well as those that walk up to get their hot lunch. So
pretty amazing. What's the time range?
They start at noon, and pretty much people are pretty prompt. So lunch is usually done by 12:25, 12:30.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. So Nicole, yeah, before I forget, it is always better to be the manager than the assistant manager. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
My question is, understanding, the uncertainty of the times, is there any specific number of people yet specified for the indoor activities at the senior center? Or is that still, kind of up for discussion?
Do you mean for the programs, like for the registered programs that are starting?
Yeah, you mentioned the bridge people and they've got like 70. Okay, so I was just, is it 70, 40, or is that still, kind of up for grabs?
It's kind of to be determined currently. The smaller card games and that kind of thing will be, probably roughly 10, 12 people at max for those. They are doing sort of a weekly social hour. So they're encouraging people to come and have coffee and socialize inside. So we're slowly but surely getting back to larger numbers, but it won't be the, 60, 70 people playing cards quite yet. That might coincide with when lunch goes back to being indoors too.
Are there any like special challenges? I mean, are people comfortable, you know?
That's a good question. I talked with some of the staff last week, and people are still very, they're completely fine with wearing masks and showing proof of vaccination. And a lot of them, the more nerve-wracking thing for them is the social aspect. So we've been talking about, being back and socializing with people. It kind of surprised me actually that it's not as much COVID that's the scare anymore. It's just how to interact with one another and be in groups. So we're kind of talking through ways on how to, prepare them for that and make folks comfortable with that part of it. So that's a good question.
I've heard that from every person of any age. They all say, I have to practice going to a movie or going out to dinner. We've gotten out of the habit of it. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Nicole, I speak on behalf of the council. We applaud Michael's decision to make you Director of Parks and Recreation Senior Services. You are the person for the job, and we're looking forward to what you can do.
Thank you.
So with that, Michael, do you have anything else?
Mayor, I do not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I'd like the Deputy City Clerk to read the consent agenda.
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, Sexual Assault Awareness Month proclamation. Item 3, Public Defender Services Contract Amendment. Item 4, Arterial Street Pavement Preservation Redondo Overlay Project Permanent Sidewalk Easement. And that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Do I have a motion? Councilmember Knight?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
In a second?
Second.
Councilmember Pennington, it looks like. Sorry, Deputy Mayor. I saw the hand up, so I'll take that. Is there anyone that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none. Oh, Councilmember Harris, you're muted.
This is actually just a question. If the engineer or the DPW, I can't see the screen. I just have a quick question. That's really all.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, it's not appropriate.
Yeah, at this time, I'm gonna not allow it.
That's
Councilmember
fine. Then
Harris.
I would like to pull the item on the arterial on Redondo. Thank you.
Okay, so item 4 is pulled. Councilmember Steinmetz?
Yes, I'd like to pull the public defender contract amendment.
Okay, item 3 pulled. With that, items 1 and 2, can I see a vote of hands that want to pass that? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Harris, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Oxiger. Items 1 and 2 pass 7-0. And with that, we'll open up the floor to we'll start with item 3, and I yield the floor to Councilmember Steinmetz.
Sure, I do have some clarification that I'm seeking, which I think is appropriate at this time, which is, as I understand it, it's roughly $1,200 a month just to comply with the traffic cams. And that's essentially the amendment that we are passing. Is that correct?
No, this relates specifically to body worn cameras.
Body cam. I'm sorry, that's what I
Yeah.
meant. Body cameras.
Yeah, for criminal cases.
So why wasn't this considered earlier in the overall cost of implementing this program?
The body worn camera program or the public defense contract?
Well, there would clearly be a bow wave that would hit the public defense contract. So I guess what happened? Did that not get just nobody thought about it until now?
Well, no, we addressed that in the packet. The public defense contract was put in place before the council had approved body worn cameras. So they weren't considered at that time.
Okay. So was it just
so when the
I don't
public
understand why this is coming back to us at this time? It was a foreseeable expense of body cameras that the public defenders are going to need access to that footage. So either it was assumed that the public defenders would have access to it, or there was an expense that was going to go along with that that wasn't considered. I'm not sure which that is.
Well, I don't know that it wasn't considered. When the council approved the body cameras, which has not gone into effect yet, there's a number of tasks that need to be completed. One of those is we're currently negotiating with the guild. And this is another one of those impacts. The body cameras are not in effect yet. So before they go into effect, we're getting all of these projects completed.
Okay, but it's, I mean, it's a due process right to have access to that footage. And, you know, I'm not quite sure why that wasn't considered at the time. And I was there when it was. I don't remember hearing anybody talking about how much it's going to cost to get these to the defense.
Mayor, if I
And we
may,
need to do, yes.
Council
Go ahead,
member,
City Manager.
yeah, council member, at the time that body cameras were considered, because we have money from our American Rescue Plan Act funds. And we also had money in there for a consultant. And I think it was, and I can look back, I'm sure we can find it, but it was my understanding that we never presented a specific cost. I think we presented some parameters of the issues that needed to be considered, this being one of them. And so there was never, because they're new, and across the nation, they're new for the most part. And so we hired a consultant who could help guide us through the process of implementation. And as Tim mentioned, it's also a negotiating item in a discussion we'll have a little later. But there was no, this is the dollar amount not to be exceeded. That was never stated. So this is coming back to council and saying, here's a cost that is associated with doing body cams. And there'll be others like that as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, there'll be staff impacts. There'll be additional items prior to implementation.
Okay, that answers my question. Thanks.
All right, and Councilmember Harris, you have a question pertaining to this subject?
Yes.
Or item?
So colleagues who were not here last year, I have consistently voted no on this issue, as I will do today. Not for the concept, but basically this is like buying the car and then finding out the floor mats aren't in there, and then, oh wow, who knew there was no radio? The truth is the go live date was supposed to be January, but there were not policies in place for data retention. The guild was not on board. So it is entirely true to say that we were never presented with a final cost. And I will never vote for a program that does not have a bottom line. I think the public deserves cost certitude, and it started at 140K. It's probably now at about, I don't know, 250. The consultant, the data retention, the guild, and on. And yeah, I want to see 300, and then I can vote for that, or whatever it is. Thank you.
Councilmember Mayor.
Go ahead, City Manager.
This will be part of a later discussion, but council member, I encourage you not to speak for the guild.
All right. Councilmember Nutting, you had your hand raised.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I just want to say this is something the public has wanted and expressed attention to this matter. Public, the availability for the cameras and stuff, and this is just, it's uncharted territory for us, and we got to take it as it comes. So with that, I move to approve the contract amendment with Stewart, McNichols, Harmel to address the impacts of body worn camera program, and authorize the city manager to sign the amendment substantially in the form as submitted.
Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Pennington. With that, we'll take the vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. I'll read you off as you go along. Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Nutting, all those, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Oxiger. With that, the motion passes 5-2. Moving on to item 4, Councilmember Harris, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask a quick, via Dan, Brandon, did the city receive any concerns about that easement?
No, there's no public comment concerning this agenda item.
Okay, but no mail or anything like that, or just comments from, the guys in the condos or that sort of thing?
No, just over time, just pedestrian accessibility and a smoother road by 282nd where that bump is. So we're kind of addressing just long-term issues that we've had comments on for years now.
Okay, good. I just, people are sensitive about it and just thought I'd ask. Thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve the permanent sidewalk easement for King County tax parcel ID 720-360-1766 and to further authorize the city manager to sign said easement substantially in the form as submitted.
Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Second.
Okay, with that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Harris, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Oxiger, and myself. Vote passes 7-0. All right, thank you. With that, at this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Deputy Mayor Buxton to read the proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Thank you for your patience while I pull this up. Whereas nationwide, 81% of women and 43% of men reported experiencing some form of sexual harassment and or assault in their lifetime. And whereas rape is among the most underreported crimes for reasons that include victims' fear of being disbelieved or further traumatized within systems designed to support them. Additional barriers such as language, immigration status, gender bias, and systemic racism further oppress and silence victims. And whereas individual and community impacts of sexual violence are rooted and compounded by racial, gender, sexual orientation, and other forms of oppression, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, people living in poverty, LGBTQ people, elders, people with disabilities, and other people targeted by oppression are affected by sexual violence in significant and complex ways. And whereas King County is home to many organizations that provide culturally and linguistically specific services for survivors from various racial, ethnic, faith, and cultural communities, survivors who are immigrants and refugees, survivors who are LGBTQ, and survivors with disabilities. These culturally specific services are critical to effectively respond to the specific needs and barriers many survivors face. And whereas negative impacts of sexual violence, trauma on women, men, children, and youth include fear, concern for safety, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, injury, and missed work or school. And whereas working together as a community, we can alleviate the trauma of sexual violence by ensuring supportive resources are available to all survivors while standing up to harmful attitudes and behaviors that contribute to sexual assault. Now, therefore, the Des Moines City Council hereby proclaims the month of April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the city of Des Moines and encourages all citizens to join advocates and communities across the country in taking action to prevent sexual violence. Signed this 31st day of March, 2022.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate that. With that, we're going to move on to new business. We're going to talk about the limits of multi-day parking on public streets within the city of Des Moines. And the presentation is going to be done by Assistant City Attorney Matt Hutchins. Matt, I turn the floor over to you. Or
thank you, Matt.
Are we going to do something with Dan at first, or Matt, do you have the presentation?
That'll be me. Thank you.
Okay, great.
One moment. All right. Yep. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Matt Hutchins, Assistant City Attorney for the City of Des Moines, giving the staff presentation for consideration of draft ordinance 21-045. Parking issues are a never-ending headache for many in modern life, including many of our citizens and the Des Moines Police. From record staff to community service officers to patrol, complaints about on-street parking are constant. While there are areas of the city that easily come to mind when we think of parking problems, complaints come regularly from all parts of the city. And one of the most common complaints, and the one that we're seeking to address tonight, is cars being parked on city streets for weeks or months at a time without moving. Up to this point, the question of what can be done often comes down to a very unsatisfying, well, it depends. The basic issue that we run into is that Des Moines has not set a specific limit on how long you can park on the streets. Without that bright line, whether the officer can take any action can come down to that officer's determination that the vehicle has been left so long that it is either abandoned or otherwise unauthorized as a matter of law. So the current situation creates a number of problems. Long-term street parking leads to shortages of parking in the neighborhoods, which leads to conflicts between neighbors over a scarce resource that theoretically belongs to everybody. Additionally, it ends up encouraging long-term vehicle storage. People use the streets to part out vehicles like a wrecking yard. Similarly, we see abandonment of vehicles, which end up deteriorating and become nuisances and become targets for vandalism and other criminal activity. So here are just a couple examples. One car that posed an easy target for theft and or vandalism. The other one, it's been parked long enough where you can see vegetation has started growing on it. This is not an uncommon occurrence, unfortunately. But when the city begins to take on the appearance of being tolerant and having no policing of long-term parking, you start to see things like this, dumped vehicles, parting out vehicles. And while these examples have deteriorated to the point where they can be safely deemed to be junk vehicles or abandoned, which allows for removal, letting them get to this point is obviously not ideal. So what we asked is, how can we address these vehicles before they get to the point where they become an obvious nuisance to the neighborhood? So we set out to see how other nearby cities deal with long-term parking. And we took 20 nearby cities from Seattle and Bellevue to the north, down to Tacoma, including all the Valley cities west of Puget Sound. And what we found in the survey, frankly, surprised me. If you look at this pie chart, the blue sections are all the 14 cities that have imposed a citywide time limit. It's nearly 3/4 of the cities surveyed. And as you can see to the right, over half of those cities have set their time limit at 72 hours. Of the 6 that have not enacted the citywide limit, Kent and Sumner have targeted short-term parking in commercial zones and certain restricted residential areas. And 2 other cities have specifically empowered their administration to create restricted parking zones as needed. Des Moines is only one of 2 cities who have taken none of these measures. So based on these results and the experience of our police department, the draft ordinance before you tonight contains 2 measures to address these parking issues. The first is to enact a citywide 72-hour limit on city streets. This will allow our police department to give tickets or warnings to cars that are parked for excessive lengths of time, and when necessary, to tag a car for impound. Putting us on par with other cities who have a 72-hour limit creates consistency and eliminates the incentive that currently exists to use Des Moines as a dumping ground or long-term parking lot. The second measure will allow our public works director to target specific areas that have more acute problems with a more restrictive zone if circumstances make it appropriate, and if circumstances change, to make adjustments to the scheme. Believe these two measures take the best parts of the various measures our neighbor cities have taken. And that concludes my presentation. Here are two suggested motions to consider, and we are happy to answer any questions you have.
Councilmember Nutting?
I move to suspend Rule 26A in order to enact draft ordinance number 21-045 on first reading.
Do I have a second? Councilmember Pennington? Thank you. With that, we'll open up the discussion and questions. Councilmember Oxiger, I see your hand first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a particular reason why we need to address this tonight and not allow it to, naturally go over to the next meeting so that the public has a chance to weigh in on this?
I would defer to police department on that. We've been wanting to get this in place for a while, and the not having committee meetings for a while has stalled this for quite a while, and the situation is getting pretty bad out there, and I think PD would like to get going.
Chief Thomas?
Yeah, we're ready to move. As you can see in those pictures, I don't think there's any need to wait. We need to get this area cleaned up. We needed to make some ordinance fixes, and we've been working on this for several months. Let's get this community cleaned up. I'll tell you where the community is complaining. They're complaining because we have junk vehicles all over. And so this is a great step to give us the tools so we can clean it up.
But my question is there any reason why, we can't wait a week and allow the public to weigh in on this if they choose to?
Council member, if I may, with all due respect, the calls we get are not people complaining that they can't park their cars long enough. The calls we get are people complaining that they're abandoned vehicles that have been parked permanently, taking away parking spots. I mean, all of the input, and I ask anyone on staff to correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the input from the community has been negative regarding our inability to address long-term parking.
And
so I don't know if that makes a difference.
And I'm just going to interject. I think this is a decision that's left to the council after the input. That'd be my answer for us to decide whether we're going to pass the first motion. So, Councilman Roxer, do you have any other questions?
No other questions.
Okay. We'll move on to Deputy Mayor Buxton. I saw you, Councilmember Pennington. I see you, Councilmember Harris.
So before I ask my question, so just for clarity, is this discussion portion right here in regard to the postponing or the Rule 26A, or is this in regard to the entire issue right now?
I think it's just the Rule 26A.
That's
okay,
correct.
Then I will comment just on 26A. This was already mentioned on social media with a little bit of a robust discussion, even just this last week. So I think the timing on this is good. I would have liked to feel a little bit more free. I didn't feel as educated enough to get on there and give information, but there were some pretty frustrated folks out there about this issue. And 26A is a really great, or Rule 26 it's a great gift to the community. Not all cities even require a second hearing on issues, or a second hearing on some of these issues. So we provide that, and I think it's designed to protect citizens against something that might really upset them. But the reason we have 26B is so that we can make this decision and accelerate, or just keep good things moving on down the road. Government, I think one of the major complaints that a lot of people have about government is that it moves so stinking slow. And so on something like this, a gift to our community, solving a problem that's out there and hot right now and just heating up faster, it's as somebody in my family says, it's kind of a no-brainer. So I'm gonna vote to go ahead and suspend 26A on this. Thank you.
All right, I believe I'll call on Councilmember Harris first, then Councilmember Pennington, then Councilmember Steinmetz. You're muted. Yeah.
It does that auto mute thing. Apologies. So I always vote no on 26A, because the funny thing is, you basically are voting, you're giving up the right to move it to the next meeting before you even know what the final language is going to be debated. It's just rubbish. And here's the thing, nobody is more on board with this ordinance than myself. I've got in my phone a whole, yeah, crap, you can't see it. So yeah, a whole gallery of cars with, blueberries growing out of them and so on. But there is an equity component here that is worth a couple of weeks. The truth is, many immigrant community members, English is not their first language. Those are the homes that often have multiple cars. They've got like people they've brought over from Vietnam, my neighbor down the street. And I want to have some kind of idea of what the final accommodations are going to be, before I decide to just, give my vote for this tonight. So, yeah, I would ask you guys, I know you guys like to vote for things all in one go, but we've been, basically goofing around with this for a long time, a couple of more weeks to just give people who are not always engaged a bit more time, isn't going to hurt anyone. Thank you.
All right, moving on to Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, relative to 26A, to Councilmember Harris's point, I don't think that the primary target right now and the request for the expediency is the folks that have extra cars that live in the neighborhood. I think it's the dilapidated cars that you've got drug activity, prostitution activity, you've got cars that are abandoned. Certainly in Redondo, I know of somebody that lives there on 8th Avenue and behind the condos. They're constantly calling the police for the prostitution that's going on in those cars and the drug activity that's going on in those cars. I think this is the point of this is to let's get a handle on this sooner than later, and that's probably the primary areas of concern relative to the types of vehicles and the activities that's going on there. So I don't think anybody's going to want to will argue with the need to have this taken care of and want to look at. Certainly you can go downtown and find a whole host of vehicles. I can point them out to you if you'd like, but I'll be in favor of suspending Rule 26A.
Hey, thank you, sir. Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I have seen what Deputy Mayor Buxton referred to on social media, and frankly, there are some cars around that are a real problem, and they've been there for a long time, and people want to get them moved. So I appreciate the desire, And what City Manager Matthias referred to is, of course, all the complaints that have come because there are no rules. And so, of course, all of the support and everything that we've heard is going to be about, hey, let's get some rules and get this problem fixed. But I think this is exactly the situation that we do need to put over for a week, just to get some input on that. Because now that we know what the proposed rule will be, essentially 72 hours with some exceptions, we don't have any way to cover when your friends show up and want to park their car in front of your house and you give them a ride to the airport. We don't have any way to deal with that at this point in time. Additionally, we don't have any way to deal with those houses that have an extra vehicle, say a work vehicle. So they've got 2 cars that fit into the driveway, but there's a truck or a work vehicle that doesn't fit into the driveway that gets parked on the street. Maybe 72 hours is a little short for that. Maybe it's just right. I don't know yet. I appreciate the idea of consistency between the cities, but I do think we need to get some input from other people who are going to be affected by this law, and at least give them a week's opportunity to do that. So while I appreciate the law, I think, obviously a lot of work went into this, and the proposal's a good one. It needs to go over a week so we can get full input from everybody.
Councilmember Nutting.
So we do have legislation on the books that deals with commercial vehicles and other vehicles that are not dilapidated, that are parked on the side of the road. I, for one, was ticketed with a commercial vehicle parked on the side of the road for longer than 48 hours, which, as long as the vehicle moves every 24 hours, you won't get a ticket for that. I still have a copy of it, and I can forward it to you, Councilmember Steinmetz, if you'd like. But this is dealing with dilapidated vehicles and other vehicles that are not of the sorts that are parked on the side of the road. So I feel that we need to move forward with this.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Well, then we need to change the ordinance to deal with just the dilapidated vehicles. Because right now, as I read it, it doesn't limit itself to that. That becomes a matter maybe of discretionary enforcement. But again, that's not what we're looking for here. That's not what the law says. 72 hours is the limit.
Mayor, can I just
more reason
add,
to put it over a week and polish this up?
Yeah.
if we want to talk about the ordinance and the details, if we pass this first motion, then we can talk about the ordinance. It does not require the council to vote yes or no on the ordinance tonight. The council can pass this motion and then discuss, we can go into discussion on the ordinance. And then at that point, either the council can vote to approve it or they can vote to set it over at the next meeting. So if you want to talk the details of it tonight, we would need to pass this first motion.
Thank you, City Attorney George. Similar to what my comments were going to be, that's why I support it. I want to get ahead and have a discussion about it tonight, and we can make that determination at the next vote. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a vote. So all those that say approve motion 1, please raise your right hand. With that, I'm going to go, I'm sorry, before I take a vote, Councilmember Oxiger, did you have something to say before I moved on?
No, actually, I was voting.
Oh, okay. All right. I wanted to make sure before, okay, with all those in favor of passing motion 1 at this juncture, please raise your right hand. Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Oxiger. With that, the motion passes 5-2. So we'll move on to motion 2. Councilmember Nutting. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry, trying to read it off another screen. I move to adopt draft ordinance 2105, repealing DMMC 10.16.010 and 10.16.010 6.16020 and replacing these sections with the new parking regulations imposed a 72-hour parking restriction and empowering the Public Works Director to post restrictive parking zones.
Do I have a second? Councilmember Pennington. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions and discussion. I'll start with you, Councilmember Harris. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just sort of have a list of process kinds of things. Would this be handled by Officer Batterman, code enforcement?
Some of it would, but also by any officer in the department.
Is it your understanding that an officer can just immediately issue an order to have the vehicle towed, like no warning?
No.
The owner should, there's a requirement for some sort of warning, or no?
Correct. It needs to be properly tagged with a sticker, and then a period of time needs to go by before it could be towed.
That's correct. There's a specific sticker that needs to be attached, that needs to be readily available, and no less than 24 hours can elapse before it's towed. And the officer is required to try to contact the owner of the vehicle before it can be towed.
How do you know that the vehicle has not moved for 72 hours?
There are ways that we are able to do that, and I'm not gonna just say it publicly right now because I don't want that to be manipulated.
No, I get it, but I just
we have to show that in court, and a judge or a hearing examiner would make that determination. We do have people that intentionally violate that, and they'll move it like 1 foot or 2 feet or whatever. And we're not in a situation where we do that. I can tell you there are jurisdictions that then get ordinances in place that show, hey, they didn't move it out of the block, so they're manipulating the system, and that's a different charge. We're not going there. We're not doing anything with that. But so therefore, we have to have ways to show if it's been moved or not.
Thank you, Chief. I guess this is for Matt. Have you already come up with sort of a draft zoning language? Would it be by street, or how would that process work?
For the specific zones under Section 2?
Yeah.
It would just be a matter of Public Works Director would figure out where we want the zones to be and then place signs at the appropriate place to mark what the zones are.
Okay, so you're not anticipating needing any kind of formal language like, 70% of the property owners on street X, if a number of people write to Andrew and it looks, reasonable, then it's up, it's at his discretion.
I don't believe we have anything like that in place now or planned, but as requests come in, that would be, I guess that would be a policy decision for Public Works.
I was just thinking, okay, so is it possible to make this down to a particular homeowner? Or does it have to be legally by street?
If we tried to essentially reserve a spot for homeowners, I think we'd run into some serious trouble with that. We'd be getting into the gift of public funds type area, and
I don't want
various
to
due process issues.
I don't want to make it like the Talmud here, but I can envision a situation where like the majority of the homeowners on the street do not want a zone, but there's like one guy with 9 classic cars or something, or some special arrangement that requires it, you know? And I'm just envisioning what the accommodation might be. Now, if I'm overthinking it, that's fine.
Yeah, all I'd say is if Andrew were to come to me with a scheme like that, I would probably advise against him putting that into effect.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor Buxton, you're next. I see Councilmember Steinmetz too in the hopper.
So there was a mention made of the situation between derelict vehicles, abandoned vehicles, and people just parking too long in one spot, not moving their vehicle, whether it's and so there was that discussion between a couple of my colleagues. So could you clarify that? So how might a situation be handled if a resident is legitimately parked in front of their house for more than 72 hours, or a guest, and receives a complaint? Are infractions negotiable? Like, are there options for warnings? And then how do you distinguish, or is there going to be an actual, you're going to distinguish between a derelict abandoned vehicle and somebody who's just parking somewhere too long?
At risk of trying to not make this too simple, I just want to say, I got to tell you, our police department does not have time to mess with your 72-hour parking ticket as you're describing. We are trying to address a problem. We had a deficit in our previous ordinance as it relates to towing. We did not have the proper sticker that needs to be affixed per the state law. And our primary intent and was to deal with the derelict vehicles, the vehicles with the vegetation growing out of them. We're trying to make the community a better, safer, cleaner, nicer place. So we're not involved in the 72-hour ticket as much of the in front of the residents. I'm telling you, our officers don't have time to engage in what you guys are discussing.
Okay, and then I had another related question. Would you like me to wait, Mayor?
Yeah, City Manager Matthias had a comment before you go to your next question.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, it's not something I would typically comment on, but I think just kind of a larger view of it is that, you know, our community, as all the communities around us, are experiencing growth and becoming more urbanized in our dynamic. And we know that there is way too much violence across jurisdictions, up on Pack Highway, in certain neighborhoods. And so we as the administration, we are completely supportive of finding tools to help our police be more effective. And this is one of them, because there was a period of time, you may remember 3-4 years ago, where Pack Ridge was literally known as a refuge for gang activity and violence. And we've changed that. We've changed that by the amount of activity up there, by our patrolling, by our emphasis. Sound Transit has helped that transition. We've done some aspects of security and engagement with our officers. Site corridors are being cleaned up. We've done a lot of things to help facilitate that. And so it's council's decision. We completely respect that. But I personally am all in favor of doing anything to give our police more tools to address situations that are intolerable for our community. And I think the ones on the margin, I think they've always exemplified very good judgment as to what is a maybe as opposed to what is an actual problem. And I think they know the difference. So I just want to share that with the council.
All right, back to you, Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I think you did a good job. So before we vote, I only have a comment, and I'll wait to make that comment until everybody's questions are answered. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Steinmetz, You have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I was curious to understand section 2 a little bit more. As I read it, or as I understand it at least, it's only more restrictive zones that are going to be created, not longer restrictive zones that are going to be created. Is that correct?
Let me refer back to the ordinance. I believe it could actually be used to create longer zones if that was appropriate.
And are there any considerations as to, individual input? Say I'm going to the airport and I'm going to be gone for the next week, and I'm leaving a car with this address on the street in order to sort of give you some notice that this is not an abandoned car, and I don't want the 72 hours enforced against it.
There is not provision for that in the draft ordinance as written.
Would it be possible to do that?
I'm sure there must be a way to draft that in there. I haven't really considered what that would look like, but that is potentially something that could be added now or a later ordinance amending the DMMCs we're talking about today.
And while I appreciate that, it's the officers aren't going to waste their time on what looks like to be, a fine vehicle that's just left there a little too long, and they're going to try to get rid of the really problematic vehicles. That's the first wave. The second wave is when people start getting complaints that fine vehicle that's left there because I'm at the airport, and I'm enjoying myself in Hawaii for a week, and now all of a sudden I come back and somebody's neighbor has complained that car's been there more than 72 hours, and then the 24 hours after, somebody came by and tagged it, and now my car is gone, and I got to pay not only an impound fee, I've got to pay whatever it costs to have it sitting in the tow lot. And all of a sudden you're creating a problem where you're creating something that isn't solving the problem that we're trying to address here. And I think that's the concern. And I'd just like to hear whether that really is a concern for the public at large or not.
If I may, Mayor, I just, to answer that, if we're getting complaints because a car's parked there from a neighbor because somebody is vacationing in Hawaii for a week, then I think it's probably a question for the council to determine if they want our community public streets to be used as a parking lot for when people go on vacation, which negatively impacts neighbors. Now, maybe that is something that the council clearly wants, and if it is, that would be fine to come up with an alternative. But if it's not, then I would suggest those are the issues the police have to deal with. The one side is, yes, someone's enjoying themselves in Hawaii, but their car is parked that's maybe limiting the view of the neighbor trying to get out and causing a safety concern for them. So it's all innocent, but at some point we need to either make a rule or not. And I guess that's your guys' decision, but I just wanted to give the other side. Sometimes it's not just the accident the parking, it's we're getting called and the complaints about the car being parked for an extended period of time while people are at the airport.
And Chief Thomas, thanks for exactly showing why we need a chance to get some public input on this. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Pennington, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Most of my questions have been answered, but I on section 2, I guess the part that I'm wondering is, does this, similar to what the city of Seattle does, they have neighborhood zones, zone A, zone B, or whatever, depending if you're a resident, you can park on the street, you know, and so on and so forth. Does this give the latitude to be able to do something like that? And is that something that is feasible for us to consider?
Seattle and other cities that have residential parking zones, they tend to have more fleshed out ordinances that talk about the process of applying for the stickers and who is eligible and what the whole framework of it. I think if we wanted to do zone parking, like a structured zone parking like that, we'd probably want to do a separate ordinance that's more extensive if we're talking about a verification process and stickers and that sort of thing.
Okay, and
I
then
guess that's my short answer.
Yeah, and I understand. And then what I would suggest is, because of the need to take care of the high hazard vehicles, the high hazard piece for the police department, I would suggest that we pass this tonight. But I would also, and I don't have it in my head exactly the verbiage, but that we would amend this to, or we can make a separate motion to have staff look at residential zoning parking similar to Seattle, do that investigation, and then also figure out how they address the, because I'm sure that in Seattle, somebody's friend is going to park in front of their house and to go to the airport. You know, how do you address that, and what are the parameters of that? And I think there's an immediate need, and then I think there's another concern that perhaps we can address secondarily with an ordinance that maybe speaks to that.
So, Dan Brewer.
Yes, in response to that, I think that's an interesting topic, Councilmember Pennington. I know we've talked about residential parking zones in the past at our Transportation and Public Safety Committee meetings. I would encourage the council not to mix that into this ordinance. But if you want to explore that we pursue that as a separate ordinance. There's significant staffing and resource needs that we would have to discuss if we were to ever talk about a residential parking zone, in addition to just some of the ordinance matters. So I would keep these as kind of separate tasks. That'd be my recommendation.
And to answer that would be my intent. I think, again, there's an immediate need. And I don't think it's as simple as taking a week to figure it out. I think it's to your point, Dan, that there's a lot more to it than just that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Oxiger, go to myself, and then I see Councilmember Harris, Deputy Mayor Buxton, and Councilmember Steinmetz. So with that, I give the floor to Councilmember Oxiger.
There we go. Sorry. Okay. I believe that Councilmember Harris was first, but
sir, I'm going and giving everybody a chance to speak in the first round,
Okay.
and then I go to the second. That's why I'm calling on in first and the second round.
Okay, I will delay my comment.
Okay. Matt, so on the language, there were 14 cities that have the 72-hour policy. Is their language essentially standard to the language you're proposing today?
Essentially, yeah. I did model the language off of there's some variations between them, but it's modeled off what I believe to be the best language out of what those cities have. And I believe it's 14 have a baseline limit of some sorts. 9 of them, I believe, had the 72. But
Okay.
Same answer either way.
All right. I agree with Councilmember Pennington. I think we need this ordinance now, but I agree that after the motion, if it was to be approved, that we make a motion that research is done to come back with neighborhood defining ordinances that we can pass at a later time to further detail this policy. Going over to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Tagging on to Councilmember Steinmetz, I was thinking about it from you'd have to have a vacation database, right? You'd have to have some way that people could call the cops and register that they're going to be in, Barbados for 2 weeks. And I would ask the police chief how thrilled he, is going to be in that, having to set up such a mechanism. I'm not against it. I'm just thinking about that process. But I'm going to see if there's interest in amending this. I think this is something we should put out a mailer to the entire city in the interim before it goes into effect. I think this is important enough that if all of a sudden cars start disappearing one day, it's going to be like, what? So I think it is worth it to make certain that every postal address in town gets a flyer informing them of this change. And so I would move to do that if a motion is necessary.
You're saying a motion to add to this motion that a mailer be mailed?
I was thinking about the process, but putting in a section that when this is a parliamentary question. Can you send out a mailer in the interim before the ordinance itself goes into effect? But that's the idea, is to give people a heads up.
I would say, and Tim, you correct me, but I would say that that is a motion made. We'd see if it was approved to be added on to this ordinance for a notification process.
I would the ordinance, I don't know that we need that in the ordinance. I mean, the ordinance is a specific legal document. It doesn't take effect for 30 days. So, I mean, we send out the city currents. This would be something that we would put in the city currents.
Yeah, but I want it, but the city current just got, shipped. I mean, I don't want people to find out, 2 months after their car got towed that, how about that? We just have a new law. I mean,
yeah, so you could, you could make a motion to have staff send out a letter to every citizen. I mean, that's a significant cost. So, let's keep that in mind. But certainly, yeah, the council could do that.
Yeah, well, I would move to, but you can execute. You've got your mailing list. We vote on it tonight. Monday, you can, turn on the Epson printer and, pump out 14,000 flyers. Yes, no?
City Manager Matthias has a comment on this.
Yeah, I would encourage Councilmember Harris not to tell us what we can and cannot do. That's an administrative call.
I'm not, I'm asking you, I'm just asking you.
I didn't hear an ask. I heard tell her we could Monday morning crank it out. That's not going to happen.
How fast could it be done within 30 days to give people a heads up?
I have no idea. We'd have to look at what would be involved in providing that to the public.
Well, all the more reason to wait a couple of weeks. Thank you.
That's assuming we pass the motion today. I'm gonna stay in order. I have Councilmember Deputy Mayor Buxton next. Councilmember Steinmetz, then I see you, Councilmember Pennington. Okay, go ahead. Deputy Mayor Buxton, you have the floor. Second
Mayor.
pass.
So I have one question and then I think a comment depending on the answer. So Matt Hutchins, I wanted to clarify, you've modeled it sounds like you've modeled this ordinance after several of the cities that have already have a very similar ordinance, correct?
That's correct. They're all
Okay.
fairly similar.
And then do any of those cities have some kind of language in it that addresses this issue that we are stumbling over right now? Have any of them put a sentence or two in that deals with this?
Is that the vacation issue?
Yeah, this residential zone, not as extensive as what Councilmember Pennington was talking about, like residential zones with this registration and stickers, but still something that addresses this issue that could come up. Do any of those cities, you had several cities that were modeling this after, all had 70, there were several that had the 72-hour, or any of them, do any of them have a little bit of language that addresses this at all?
I don't recall that any of them had any of that sort of allowance.
Okay,
to them.
so I would just like to make a comment then. So only 2 South King County cities have no ordinance addressing this at all. That's us and Fife. 45% of those who do, they have 72-hour limit, just like what we're proposing here. And what I just learned from our assistant city attorney is none of those cities have language in their ordinances that address this issue that we're talking about right now. So that was one of the most key sentences in the whole discussion portion of the packet to me, is that only 2 cities didn't have anything addressing this at all. So this, and another key was, it's a huge incentive. It eliminates the incentive to bring these cars here into our city because we don't have anything here. And I was impressed with the amount of research that came to the table. Many times when we've got something, some of my colleagues will say, well, other cities do this or other cities do that. And I so appreciate what our police department did and our legal staff did, is went out into, did you see the amount of cities and the amount of research that was involved to bring this to the table? And we've got citizens that are ready to pull their hair out over this. And I appreciate the city manager's comment about, we are giving our police department some tools. When you talk about law enforcement and all the issues surrounding law enforcement in our environment, in our society today, our law enforcement needs tools. And we can wait for a couple weeks, but you know what? This is common sense. This is just a common sense tool that we want to hand to our police officers. All these other cities have done it. They haven't addressed, I can feel it. I can feel what we're stumbling over here, but I want to say, to give a plea, let's give this tool to our police department and our legal staff. Let's move forward. If somebody, and then maybe put it on the work plan in public safety as a topic of discussion to solve anything else that comes. But I feel very strongly, this is common sense. Just give this tool to our police. So I'm going to be voting to pass this tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Steinmetz.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, I really understand that this is a problem and we need to address it and we need to come up with a good law to do this. Now, the fact is that section 1 of this specifically references an official posted sign that provides for a shorter time period. And the only place that comes from is the discretion exercised in section 2. So I really do think that what is allowed is for the Public Works Director to limit the time, not to expand the time. And what that does is that does create sort of a de facto residential parking area where perhaps around the apartments, a heavily apartmented area where there's a lot of traffic and parking can be a problem, is then it becomes posted as a 24-hour limitation. And then we've created a de facto residential parking zone. I don't think this has been worked through enough. I'd at least like to find out if people are going to object to that. I would like to come up with a solution that really does work and doesn't have to go back for a work plan or a revisit or try to amend it at that point, but try to get it right the first time. And I just don't think we're there yet. So all I'm asking is that we've set it over to next week's meeting and address it at that and vote on it at that point after we've had a chance for some input, after we've had a chance to work some of the language a little bit better. Thank you.
Councilmember Oxiger, your second time.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is appropriate or not, but I would move to table this until next week or the next meeting.
We have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Point of order, Mayor. That's,
I think you meant postpone.
Postpone,
Not table.
Okay.
table, postpone. Yeah, I'm sorry, postpone to postpone,
I stand
not
corrected.
table. Okay, motion to postpone.
Mayor, if I
Yes.
may,
Yes.
our next meeting, I believe, is a goal-setting retreat by the council. I'm not sure that will be an opportunity to take formal action. So essentially it would be the second meeting, I believe, on April 14th.
So it'd
Just
be
for
a
clarity.
postponement to April 14th. Do I have a second?
second,
Okay, I have a second. Any discussion prior to that before I take the vote? Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Oxiger. Discussing still on postponing it for the next 2 weeks to the 14th of April.
Right, and it gives us time to come back and answer some of the questions and gives the public the opportunity to weigh in on this. And I fully support the argument that there's not a particular emergency that we have to do this right now. We should get it right rather than having to come back, if at all possible, rather than having to come back and revisit.
Anybody else?
Mayor?
On this specific subject, Councilmember Harris?
Fair enough.
What's that?
No, Mayor.
All right. I would say that I think the language is standard within other cities, and I don't think it necessary to delay this vote. But with that, we're going to vote on the postponement issue. So all those in favor of postponing till April 14th, please raise your hand. I see Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Oxiger. All those opposed? Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. Motion does not pass 4-3 or 3-4. So moving back on to motion 2. Sorry, Councilmember Harris, you've already done your 2 times. I'm the last one here, and I think the communication piece, I think the normal channels through Facebook, through the Currents, through the Waterland blog, and the normal public protocol is enough to notify the city residents about the change. I think that the police need this now. I think it's important. And I think it's okay to change or clarify some portions of the zoning or how we handle parking at a later time. Now you could say we can get it right, but we can be paralysis by analysis sometimes. And this is clearly the policy that several other cities pretty much have and haven't had the issues we're discussing. If we do have them, we change it. That's why we're here. The law changes and mutates. It's a life, it has a life of its own. So with that, I'm going to take the vote.
Point of order, Mayor. I have a motion on the table.
What was your motion, sir? Was your motion of the communication piece? Okay.
If we're not postponing, then let's vote on that, please.
Okay, let's take that. So do I have a second for his motion on the communication piece? Seeing none, the motion dies. All right, taking a vote on motion 2. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye. I have Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Oxiger. Motion passes 5-2. Thank you. All right, now we come to the time for items of introduction of items for future consideration. We will move on to new business at this time is this for the sole purpose of proposing new items that have not previously been before the council for discussion on a future agenda. This is not a time for questions about old business. Council members can submit questions or seek updates on previously discussed business to the city manager at any time. Do any council members have new business they would like to propose? Seeing none, we'll move to the public hearing. So the public hearing item of the 2024-2033 Recology King County Comprehensive Garbage Recyclables and Compostable Collection Service Contract with staff presentation by Dan Brewer and Laura Tashiko. I now open the public hearing, and I yield the floor to Dan and Laura for a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's our pleasure to come back to you in a relatively short amount of time with the proposed contract that's before you. If you recall, we came before you in early February and with the issue of a contract extension so that we could negotiate a new solid waste contract. And we were able to, we believe we've been successfully able to do that. Laura is going to give the bulk of the presentation at the hearing tonight, and I'll let her begin by introducing the team. So with that, Laura, why don't you take it from here?
Thanks, Dan. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Laura Tashiko, Principal Planner, and also in the meeting tonight, besides Dan and myself, we have the city's consultants, Jeff Brown and Jeanette Jurgensen with Epicenter Services, and with Recology, Steve Brum, Vice President and Regional Manager, Anthony Mercado, General Manager, and Quinn Apuzzo, Government and Community Relations Manager. Next slide, please. So some background leading up to this point. So our current contract started in 2011, and throughout the 10+ years of this contract, Recology has been a community partner, not just here to do a job, but to help the city better serve the community. At the February 3rd meeting, 2 options were presented to council: a 2-year extension with an 11% a 1-year extension to our current contract with no additional cost, or a 2-year extension with an 11% increase, both with the assumption that the city would enter into direct negotiation with Recology. The 1-year option through October 31st, 2023, with an expedited process, was approved, and staff was directed to enter into contract negotiation. Then the city, in conjunction with our consultants, developed the initial draft, reviewed it with Recology, and then they prepared a rate proposal to fit that contract. During these discussions, it was determined that it made more sense to add an additional 2 months of an extension through December 31st, 2023, so that the new contract would line up with the inflation adjustment that happens every January 1st. That way there won't be a need for a rate change 2 months after starting a new contract. Next slide, please. So some of the highlights of the current contract we've discussed previously include collection from city facilities and events like concerts in the park and the Waterland Parade, coordinating with the city's Public Works Department to collect during bad weather, education and outreach to businesses and multifamily developments to better utilize available services, and volunteer activities like cleanup events, booths at the farmers market, and meet and greet events with residents. Next slide, please. So overall, the new contract is very similar to the existing, with some changes and enhancements to address industry changes, current trends, and performance tools for the city. Some of the familiar programs that are continuing include the continued collection from city facilities and continuing programs for utility discounts for senior, low-income, and disabled residents, and cart carry-out assistance for senior and disabled residents. The curbside collection of an expanded list of recyclables, and educational outreach programs for all customers. Next slide, please. So these next two slides list some of the contract enhancements. So under the current contract, there are 2 curbside residential garbage collection events each year that occur the week after the city's recycling events. And actually that's going on this week. But participation in these has decreased significantly over the years. And so in order to provide more flexibility and options for residents, these will be replaced with 2 programs. The first is an on-call bulky waste collection. So once each year, single-family customers can put out 3 additional carts or bags of garbage, just like they do under the current events, plus 2 bulky items like a couch or a chair. And these can be scheduled at a time that works for them. And in addition, there will be twice-a-year garbage drop-off events that are coordinated with the recycling events. The contract includes the collection of extra yard debris after storm events. And in addition to the current city facility collections, Recology will support the city's code enforcement program by providing a drop box container up to 10 times each year for enforcement cleanup activities. Currently, commercial and multifamily customers, as part of their garbage service, receive a recycling container that's up to 1.5 times the size of their garbage container. It can be challenging to accurately track any extras, as well as if when the customer makes the effort to recycle more and is able to reduce their garbage service to save costs, their recycling capacity also reduces. So the current contract provides for unlimited recycling regardless of the level of garbage service. Next slide, please. At the February meeting, there was discussion on the potential for an all-electric fleet, and it was deemed still too early in the development of electric collection vehicles in terms of reliability and cost, but the city still has a focus on sustainability. So under the new contract, Recology will use new natural gas collection vehicles that meet 2023 or later emission standards with fully electric support vehicles like supervisor and cart delivery trucks wherever feasible. There is a new section added to address labor disruption. The contractor will develop a strike contingency plan prior to any labor agreements expiring in order to minimize impacts to collection during strikes. The current contract uses 3 separate inflation indices with a weighted formula, fuel, labor, and the consumer price index or CPI. The new contract will use a straight CPI adjustment for a simpler and more stable approach. The contract continues and enhances specific performance standards for collection and customer service for things like staffing, handling of customer calls, and missed collections. The current contract, this continues a city administrative fee that will be lowered under the new contract so that we maintain but not increase current revenues. And this can be adjusted as the city's needs change. Next slide, please. And as staff informed the council in February, contract rates are increasing across the region, and this is the case under this new contract. And it's due to a number of factors that include annual increases not keeping up with inflation, market changes, and supply chain issues. So the chart on the left here shows some of the most common service levels for single family and commercial customers. The first column contains the current monthly rates. The second column's the rates under the new contract. So for example, the average single family customer with a 32-gallon cart, the difference between the 2024 contract, which is almost 2 years from now, and the current rates would be just under $5 a month at $4.81. However, What we don't know at this point that will likely make this a more gradual transition is what inflation is going to look like between now and then. So overall, the new 2024 contract rates are an average of 22% higher than the current. There will be an annual inflation adjustment to the current contract rates on January 1, 2023, before the new contract starts, which will reduce the amount of this increase. So in other words, several percentage points of that 22% represent expected inflation and aren't an underlying increase due to the new contract. The actual underlying percentage increase in rates will likely be more in the mid to high teens. While it's difficult to estimate right now what inflation will look like, the bar chart on the right shows kind of a likely scenario. So the darkest blue represents the current rates, the lightest blue, the 2024 contract rates, and in between there will be incremental inflation adjustments in 2023 and what would have been an inflation adjustment for 2024 that's assumed in the new rates. The percentage increase varies between customer types, even within residential and commercial customers. Similar to last contract, the new rates were developed on a cost of service basis to eliminate subsidies between lines of business, like raising commercial rates in order to keep residential rates lower. So rates are set at what it actually costs to serve each customer. Next slide, please. Part of the scope of the consultant contract was to prepare a comprehensive rate comparison with other recent contracts in the region. And this chart shows 3 cities, Duval, Federal Way, and Mercer Island, and their 2022 rates adjust as much as possible for differences between the cities and the contracts. So on this chart, the first column are the current Des Moines rates, the second are the proposed rates, and then the current 2022 rates for the 3 cities, followed by a multi-city average. So similar King County cities that had recently completed a competitive contract procurement process were chosen. Federal Ways were expected to be lower due to that being the oldest contract, and also they're having approximately 3 times the number of customers as Des Moines and Mercer Island. So there are differences in lines of business between how we compare for residential rates versus commercial rates, and the reality is that every city can customize where they set the rates to achieve the total revenues, and some might distribute them differently. And as I stated earlier, our new contract assumes a straight cost of service. So the current average monthly rates are lower than the average 22 rates for these cities, but comparing our new rates to these is more of an apples to oranges comparison, because these city rates shown are going to be increased or adjusted for inflation in 2023, and then again in 2024, and then that will likely bring the rates closer. And we'll take a look at what that might look like on the next slide. Okay, and for this chart, the city assumed a very conservative 3% inflation adjustment in 2023 and 2024, and then comparing those to the proposed 2024 contract rates. So 3% is consistent with historic rates, but less than currently. So if we assume that inflation, the 2024 rates with our new contract fall much closer to the other cities' average. So the average single family rate being 15% above is more around 10. And the average commercial rates go from 9% below to 13% below. And also with the assumed inflation, this brings the total contract revenues, that low bottom line for the new Des Moines contract just below the multi-city average. So an overall revenue goal of 5.22 million compared to 5.29. So that puts that kind of right in line with the others. Next slide, please. So as part of the public hearing, we had a comment period, and the city received one resident question, and it related to whether carryout services would be continued for senior and disabled residents. And it was confirmed that yes, they would be. The sections and the 2 contracts are almost identical. Next slide, please. And an issue that has been and continues to be a priority for both the city and Recology is customer service. As I mentioned earlier, the contract spells out the operational standards for customer service, and questions and service issues should first be reported to Recology. Anything that is escalated within Recology is detailed in their monthly reports to the city. If an issue isn't resolved or not resolved to the customer satisfaction, they may always report it to the city so that we can follow up. On average, the city receives 1 or no escalated issues each month. Numbers were slightly higher over the summer of 2021, and those were due to the same factors that affected the city and other employers during the pandemic. And Recology has been very responsive in resolving those issues.
Laura, I'm sorry to interrupt. Would
No,
you,
please.
could you give an example of what an escalated issue would be within Recology? How does that work?
So if someone called in for a missed collection and it was scheduled for for some reason it was not picked up within the time period indicated, and they're calling back in, that might be ramped up to either a supervisor and a route supervisor or a customer. And then, if that is still not resolved to their satisfaction, that might come to me either through an email or a phone call or to one of the, the front counters. And so we would follow up and by an email and get a response back. So, okay, next slide, please. And as with inflation, there are some things that are within the city's control and some things that are outside of it. King County tipping fees for the use of their system are added to the rates that we've already discussed. They recently restructured how these are calculated. So while the intent is to be revenue neutral, the new process will require amendments to both the current and the 2024 contracts. And we will bring those forward when this process has been finalized by the county. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, staff feels that this is a very good, solid contract with reasonable rates that are consistent with the other contracts that are being developed around the region. Recology has been very collaborative and responsive throughout this negotiation. Rates are locked in for 2024, and Recology shares a great deal of the risk from inflation and with the fact that if and when this contract is signed, they're going to put an order in for trucks right away. They've been a great partner over the last 10 years, and staff looks forward to working with them for another 10. So that concludes the staff presentation. The recommended motions for the 2-month contract extension and the 2024 contract are shown on this slide.
Thank you, Laura. Dan, did you have anything else to add in the presentation before I go to public comment?
No, that concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Right. It is now time for the public comment portion of the public hearing. Has anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, Mayor. Quinn Apuzzo has signed up to speak.
Quinn Apuzzo. Quinn, are you there? You are. If you could turn your camera on. While you're doing that, I'll read the traditional statement we read. Before we take the public comment, I would just like to remind those participants that any person making impertinent or slanderous remarks or become boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the council will be removed from the meeting. When it's your time to speak, you may turn the camera on if you have one, and after you have concluded, please turn the camera off. With that, Quinn, I turn the floor over to you for the next 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for this opportunity to speak with you this evening. I apologize, I'm having some technical issues, but wanted to address a brief statement. So again, my name is Quinn Apuzzo, and I am the Government and Community Relations Manager for Recology King County. And I'm here tonight to say thank you for the opportunity to continue to serve the community as the community's provider of recycling and solid waste services and as a partner in sustainability. As a 100% employee-owned company whose mission and vision are to achieve a world without waste, Recology places a premium on community relationships and is proud of our demonstrated commitment to the City of Des Moines. Over the course of our service, we have worked together to offer residents new convenient ways to reduce landfill waste, including launching the region's first curbside styrofoam recycling program, as well as expanding recycling options for hard to dispose of materials like electronics, textiles, bikes, and much more at the award-winning Recology store in Highline. From marching in the Waterland Parade to leading a recycling relay race at Camp Chaos, to chatting with residents at the farmers market every summer, we have built lasting relationships and provided tools and resources that have helped Des Moines residents and businesses waste less and recycle more. We are a proud supporter of numerous community organizations and events, such as Des Moines Dollars for Scholars, Poverty Bay Blues and Brews Festival, and the Highline Schools Foundation, and look forward to continuing these relationships for many years to come. Again, thank you for trusting us to deliver this essential service to the community over the past 10 years. We look forward to continuing to all we can accomplish together during the next 10. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Quinn. So now we're going to turn to the council questions portion, just questions, not comments, before I close this portion of the hearing. So with that, council members with questions, I see I'm going to go Deputy Mayor Buxton. I'm going to go Council Member Pennington, Council Member Harris. Harry, you want to get in on this? Council Member Steinmetz, Jean, Council Member Oxiger. I'll put you down, and then Council Member Nutty. Got it? All right. I just want to make sure we get the order. With that, I'm going to yield the floor for questions to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. So Laura, these are two questions for you. The first had to do with the rates, the two screens that you showed with the rate spreadsheet. So my interpretation of that, a summary statement would be basically the rate structure for Des Moines residents. It's going to be lower than the average of cities for rates, both current or just upcoming and in the near future. Did I interpret that correctly? Is your average of cities when you included that column?
So the current rates are slightly lower than the average. The future rates, like I said, with the cost of service, the residential rates are trending just above the average of other cities, and the commercial rates continue to be just below.
Okay. And then about community satisfaction, you talked about almost no complaints. Like I think it was mentioned, like sometimes not even one complaint in a month. Could you just make a little statement or comparison about the services that we had before we had Recology, and just as a comparison about the kind of service that we're getting?
I would estimate that I averaged 2 to 5 calls a week under the former contract. And like I said, I went back over the last year and a half and tallied up everything that had been forwarded to me. And it was either 1 a month or none a month. And like I said, there was a slight uptick over the summer, but that means, 3 and 4, not 20 or 30. So yeah, and that's consistent for the last 10 years. Sometimes I would go for several months without getting a call.
Thank you. That's all I have for now, Mayor.
Okay. Moving on to Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, thank you. So the only question I have is relative to some of our seniors or folks that have a little more income challenges. Is there a means through Recology where they can get some relief for their monthly fees?
So in my understanding, and City Manager Dan might have a little more information, but the utility discount program, they would first apply for eligibility through our finance department at the city. And then that information is conveyed to Recology for a discount.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Harris, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So Laura, when One complaint. Wow. Okay. So what was the, why was I was looking at the, expected revenue. Is there a particular target that the city is trying to hit?
For the overall
Yeah.
revenues? I'll look to our consultants for a little backup, but my understanding is that is, what is needed to operate the collection service. But I'll see if they want to elaborate further.
Literally just break even, right? So I'm assuming there is an industry standard of, city revenue, right? For cities our size, some sort of comparable, correct? Or no?
I think, let me see if I understand the question. So we prepared a contract of what we wanted our solid waste collection to look like. And Laura went over some of the enhancements that we added to our current contract. We discussed those enhancements with Recology, and then they put a price proposal together to achieve that contract, those contract requirements and goals over the next 10 years. And that's, we took their price proposal and then compared that to recent contracts in King County. So that's how.
Yeah, and there is the city administrative fee in terms of city revenues. We aim to keep that neutral. So whereas the previous administrative fee was 13%, that's been reduced to 11% to make sure that we're staying neutral. Otherwise, that amount would go up with higher rates.
I'm just asking, is that in line with cities, our code cities, 30, 40, Bothell was 45,000. Is there just an industry standard? It's okay. So, is there any industry standard waste reduction kind of program? There are a number of cities now that have some kind of formal agreement with the provider to encourage businesses and residents to, generate less waste. I was struck by the fact that wasn't in this. Is that something anyone's considered, or that just, hasn't made it?
I guess I would look to potentially Jeanette to answer that question.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff.
Hi, Jeanette.
The cities in King County do have an interlocal agreement with King County for their comp plan, which has some general goals in it. Different cities also have their own sustainability plans. And they can work with their haulers for a targeted number for waste reduction, but generally they work together and do customized programs for their community.
Okay, one last thing. So apparently there is no time, there's just not enough time to generate a community survey. Assuming, we lived in a different 4D space, how much time would be necessary to provide a community survey?
I guess, Jeffrey, what is the typical full length if we did the full procurement process with city involvement?
Would it require the full 2 years?
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
How come? I'm just, how come?
We explained that at the February 3rd meeting. Would you like me to repeat that apparently?
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I've got Novocaine up the wazoo, man. I must have forgotten. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, again, it takes about a year to do a full negotiated, a standard RFQ process with public comment and negotiating a contract with the hauler. And then it takes another year for startup operations. They have to order the fleet. They've got to hire employees. They have to order the carts. They've got to change out the carts. They've got all of the administrative functions of starting a new business in a city. That takes at least a year under normal circumstances. We're not in normal times right now, so it may even be longer than 2 years.
I just meant the survey part.
I'm gonna
The flyer
Just a sec, Councilmember Harris. Or City Manager Matthias had a comment too for you. In
I
response.
just want to mention that the extremely low number of complaints that we receive, and I've said this tongue in cheek, but it's essentially true, that I've received more complaints from Des Moines residents who live in Iowa about their recycling not being picked up than I have from the city of Des Moines in Washington. Okay. And so in many respects, the level of complaints that we receive is a proxy for a community survey, because I assume the people that everything's fine with are not complaining. And Councilmember Harris, we anxiously awaited your transmittal of all the multiple complaints you allege to have received, and you forwarded nothing to us. So I just want to make that point. I think we're on fairly secure ground, saying that generally, and maybe exceptionally, this is an outstanding service based on the number of complaints we receive. So I would take that as a proxy for the community survey.
No, sir, I am on very firm ground in telling you that a lack of complaints is no proxy for customer satisfaction.
Councilmember Harris, can you please keep
Point of order. This is not, point of order,
Yeah,
Mayor. This is not.
No,
time for comment.
Councilmember Harris, can you please keep to the questions?
I asked a simple question. How long does Recology take to do a customer satisfaction survey?
And it sounded like 2 years was the answer.
So the answer was 2 years to stand up the business. I just wanted to know how long they take.
Okay.
Never mind.
So do you have any other questions, sir?
No.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I'm almost afraid to ask the first one, but hopefully it's going to answer some of the questions that were raised. Laura, in the presentation, you talked about citizen input on the contract, and there was like one. Yes. How did that happen? What was done to seek citizen input?
So that was the notice of public hearing that was sent out, posted on social media and all the standard places that we post at Seattle Times. So that resulted in one email.
Okay. And also, of course, back in February when we had the meeting to talk about the new contract, that presumably would have let people know we wanted to hear some input.
Correct.
Okay. Regarding the disability services part of the contract, section 4.1.5, how do people apply for that service so that somebody can, essentially, it allows Recology to come in and get the bucket and bring it out, correct? Do they actually go into the house? Can you elaborate a little bit and how people find themselves eligible for it?
So that, let's see, I'm not sure if I could do that as quickly as Jeff or Jeanette could on this.
Okay.
But theoretically, it's directly through, they would coordinate that with Recology through their customer service line.
Okay. And that sort of leads me to the next, and it's a broader question. Although I wouldn't expect it necessarily to be part of the contract, does Recology have any kind of communication plan to, publicize their services, the disability services, how to deal with disruptions and when the next pickup will be, or these extra services that are now in the contract, such as the bulky items, the once a year pickup? How is that going to get communicated out to the customers? Was there any discussion about that?
So those types of information are typically in there. There are flyers sent out for both new customers and each year with the rate adjustment. So there's the opportunity to expand on the services in those. There's space in the invoices that are sent out to add, either add information on the invoice themselves or to do an insert into those mailers. They have a website and other ways to convey that information.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Oxiger, did you have any questions?
No. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right. Councilmember Nutting, did you have questions?
I did. I'll refrain from making a comment, but how can we recycle our styrofoam? It's a huge thing in our household, and I collect it and take it down to Kent to Styro Recycle. And as Recology, how can we recycle our styrofoam?
So under the new contract, we'll be continuing the same program we've done, and that was actually piloted in Des Moines a few years ago. So there's a couple options. You know, you could take it to the Recology store in Burien, but one of the best benefits of this contract is that styrofoam is collected curbside. There are preparation requirements. It goes in a clear bag, it's secured, and it's available to be picked up at the curb, but that's something that's not common in other cities, and a big benefit of our contract.
And I'm sorry to follow up with that. I mean, obviously we have different colored styrofoams, and there's several that can be put in your yard waste container as well that are biodegradable, but we have black, we have brown, we have yellow, we have, and I'm sorry to get off on this tangent. It's a huge thing for me to reduce the landfill proportions, and we have a ton of styrofoam that gets sent in packages. So I'm sorry.
And that's certainly something that customer service can help answer additional questions. I'm not sure if there's anything at this point, Quinn, that you want to add on the types of styrofoam or how it could be prepared.
Sure. So for the curbside styrofoam collection program, it's white block styrofoam. So this type of styrofoam that comes around electronics or dishware, that's in packaging material. That's really what we're talking about. We've got more information about it on the website, but as a general rule of thumb, it's the block styrofoam. And as Laura mentioned, we ask that it's bagged up in a clear plastic bag, placed out on your curb on your recycling day. There's a form on our website that's pretty quick and easy to fill out. It lets us know that you're going to be setting it out, because one thing we want to manage too is to make sure it doesn't blow away or become a mess in your neighbor's yard. So if you go on our website, fill out that service request form, or you can call customer service. Just let us know you're going to be placing it out. There's no additional charge. And then there's also additional information on the website, and that we can provide the city to share through your various platforms and outlets about because we know that there's other types of, the black and brown and colored styrofoam, or styrofoam that's made up of a slightly different consistency than what we're talking about here. So we've got more information about that we'd be happy to share.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris, I'll let you go in a second. I'm going to take my first pass too. This is to the consultant. How many cities have you reviewed over the career or the life of your business for waste disposal, such as our city has asked for your services? Are they here?
Yeah, there's Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, so I've been doing this for almost 35 years, but I really specialized in procurement about 25 years ago. And so now I've actually hit the point where in some of the King County cities, I'm doing the third procurement over their cycle. So it's been a while, and I've worked for almost all King County cities. So I can give you an idea of comparative information, whatever you want, but I won't try to spend too much time in your council meeting.
That's not it. What you're telling me is that you have extensive experience in reviewing this, which is a money savings efforts by our city to make a good decision on getting the best service at the best cost. Correct?
Yes, I'm actually my tilt and my consulting practice has always been as a ratepayer advocate.
Okay, and in your assumption, the contract that's being proposed tonight, both of them, for that matter, are probably the best situation we can set ourselves up as a city.
Yes, and I would say that Laura's probably smiling inside right now because I'm Mr. Always do an RFP. I don't want to do negotiations, you know, and I tell cities the rates are going to go up 20 to 25%. And I have to say, I was very pleasantly surprised at the service package and the rates that came out of this negotiation. I was actually quite surprised. And I think it's a fantastic contract. And I think Recology was a very good negotiation partner.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate your answers. With that, I'm going to move on to the second round of questions for Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Did I hear correctly? There was some sort of program for seniors? Yes, no, maybe did I?
So there's a utility discount and then there's a carry-out service.
No,
both.
the discount. Is that through the city or through Recology?
You would apply for that through the city, and then once deemed eligible and approved, that list is sent to Recology, and then the discount is removed from the Recology invoices.
And I believe you said you'd sign up through the finance department?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay.
Probably best to
That
send
is correct,
through
yes.
the city clerk.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Before we go, before we ask you, see if any other council members have questions, it was brought to my attention that there was one slide, Dan, that you may want to show us, or do I have that correct?
Yeah, just back early in the presentation, Bonnie, I don't know if you could go back to, I think probably the second or third slide. That's slide number 3. You know, this is an event here. This future solid waste operator in the making here. This was a family that reached out. Their child is really interested in solid waste, garbage truck and recycling operations, and wanted to see if there was any way that we could work something out to meet, you know, Recology, and Recology was willing to show up. And anyway, this is just a great example of the community, the willingness to work with our community and make future public servants. And so this is just a great experience. I wasn't able to attend this, but I've heard that you can hardly take that vest off of that kid. I think he sleeps in it. So anyway, it's just a really good example of the kind of community partner that we have with Recology, and it's just worth mentioning.
Okay, Mayor, if I may, I think Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Buxton attended that event, and we got some of those pictures, but it really seemed like a touching scene.
It was very sweet. I was planning on making a few additional comments during my board and committee reports. If that's all right, I'll talk a little bit about it.
Let's go ahead and wait till the comments section of it. This is supposed to be for questions only. It was just additional information. Is there any other council members that have questions? Seeing none, I will now close this public hearing. Is there a motion? Councilmember Nutting.
I move to extend the existing comprehensive garbage recycling and compostables collection agreement with Recology King County by 2 months through December 31st, 2023, and authorize the city manager to sign the contract extension substantially in the form as attached.
Second. Okay. I have a second by Deputy Mayor Buxton. Any discussion before we take a vote? Councilmember Nutting.
I just want to say that I've been thoroughly impressed with Recology. I might be biased. I have come home, which most people know that I bookend my weekends with camping trips and events to take the family out of town. And I've come home and had my garbage receptacle and yard waste and stuff emptied. The drivers come down my driveway, pull them out of the side of my house, and empty them for me. And I've lived in the city for 20 plus years, and without Recology, that never would have happened. So I'm saying I might be a little biased, but the drivers, they have no idea who I am or what I do, and they continuously pull my trash cans aside, empty them when I'm not at home. So I'm happy to extend this contract.
I would add that that the value here, our job is to find the blend of customer service and cost. As the consultant just pretty much explained to us, that we have achieved that. It isn't broken, hasn't been broken, and it doesn't need to be fixed. Continuing on with great service is a great idea. Complaints are minimal. And I know that being participant in the parade and some other things, they have always come through for us with the services they provided. And the last thing is, and I spoke to, I'm not going to steal too much of your thunder, Deputy Mayor Buxton, but I spoke to the father today. We just wanted to make sure that we had his permission to use the photo for the presentation. And he was thrilled. He did attest that Isaiah has not taken off the vest, and the toy recycling truck he uses continuously and will not put down. And he was forever thankful to the city, Recology, and those people that facilitated, particularly the driver of the truck, who now has become his best friend when he makes his pickup. So Deputy Mayor Buxton, I'll give you the floor.
Well, the mayor is not going to tell you this so much, but really he is the one that facilitated this event for this sweet family. This is a couple that reaches out, this mom and dad along the highway, service helps challenged folks up and down the highway, and then they've got this child. And so the mayor connected with this family, bought this little garbage truck with this kid who practically sleeps at the garbage truck. And so arranged, and Laura, on our staff for this, and Quinn Puzo from Recology, they put this all together. I just was able to enjoy it at the end, and this family was really amazing. So that's just one example. I mean, I think a tagline, Recology is more than just a sanitation company. They are really committed to being part of the community. That means it's a company full of human beings that want to connect, right? This truck driver, Charlie, everybody in town knows him. I did not realize what a little local hero he is. Kids follow the truck. All the people at Annie Irene's know him. I mean, he just has engaged with the community because of his great big heart. And so this is a company that kind of thing comes down from the top, right? And then there's the thing about fully electric support vehicles coming down the pipe with this contract, a drop box for cleanup events. Michelle Fawcett needs to know about that, and other people who create these community cleanup events. They're going to bring a drop box. I know here again, the mayor, he just takes his truck to the full of stuff and pays for it on his own, so I am really impressed with their community engagement and how much they care. It's top down. These drivers care, these people care. And I think this is a great contract all around. I'm thrilled to have them as a partner. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. Here's just one more example. They pour into our farmers market. They have a booth down there. I think they give like $500 a year to the farmers market. I mean, the list is long and keeps growing. So thank you, Recology.
Councilmember Pennington, you had your hand raised too?
Yeah, I did. I would echo everything that my colleagues have said about Recology. man, and I've when I've driven around town, I've seen the drivers go and pick up cans and help people and not just folks that I'm assuming would have signed up for that, but they go the extra mile. They're really invested in the community that they serve. They're invested in the citizens that they interact with. I say this with the highest compliment. I would put them right up there with firefighters. So anyway, some of you will understand that, but it's really over the years and the interactions and the things that I've witnessed and the things that I've heard, you guys are just knocking it out of the park, and thank you very much. And I am honored to vote in favor of this.
Any other council members that wish to comment? Seeing none, I will take a vote on motion 1. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Going in order, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris. Motion passes 6-1. Councilmember Nutting.
I move to adopt draft resolution number 22-011 to authorize the city manager to sign the 2024 and 2023 comprehensive garbage recycling and compostables collection service contract sustainably in the form attached.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Buxton. Any discussion before we take a vote? Councilmember Steinmetz, do you have a comment? You're on mute. You're on mute, sir.
I just was fixing that. So, yeah, I just want to say this is the big contract. I mean, Recology has done an excellent job with its presentation tonight. I think the city has done a very good job with its presentation tonight. And I think that this contract, which in term or length is approximately the same as the first contract we signed, which answered one of my big questions that I had coming in, which was why so long? Well, that's what we did last time. And apparently that is a pretty standard length for a sanitation services contract. And then we have all of the evidence from the consultant that really this is a well-done process and an excellent contract for the city. I feel assured that we are going to get good service. I certainly have not had any cavalcade of complaints or anything like that. And so I think this is a contract worth signing, and I fully support it.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, thank you, Jeff. Very impressed. Sounds like you were worth the money. And to Recology, thank you for the great service in the past, and we look forward to giving you great service in the future. With that, I'll take a vote on motion 2. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Or just raise your right hand. Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Harris, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. Vote passes 7-0. Thank you very much, and we will move on to board and committee reports. And I will start with Councilmember Oxiger.
You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the pleasure last Thursday night of attending the Highline Schools Foundation's 2022 Gold Star Awards, highlighting the outstanding efforts of educators, staff, volunteers, and others who work for the Highline Public Schools. It was a great event, and I'd like to note one particular award winner of the night, Alejandro Silva Avendano of Pacific Middle School was named Outstanding Rookie Teacher. Alejandra teaches 8th grade social studies at Pacific Middle School. She serves students in several capacities, including leading Pacific's Latinx Club, helping students in homework help after school, coaching track, and helping students during lunch. Her nominators say, quote, Alejandra treats every student with dignity and respect and ensures that each of her students has what they need to be successful. Whether it is translated text and instructions for newly arrived English language learners, support doing after-school homework help, or extra communication with a student's family. She is the epitome of the warm demander and ensures students know that she has high expectations for them because she cares about them and their future. Alejandra participates in Pacific's school life and with the wisdom of a teacher far beyond her years. There is no rookie teacher more committed to students, end quote. Congratulations, Alejandra, and thank you for your service. It's a service that many school teachers have done throughout the pandemic, and we've placed a tremendous burden on our teachers and school personnel during the COVID crisis. Our teachers need our help. Our young families need help. As a city and as individuals, we need to step up and once again provide the supervision, guidance, and support during before and after school hours to enable our kids, our future, to recover from the pandemic and realize their potential. We cannot cower in the face of COVID. We cannot place personal safety above our collective responsibility to care for our kids. Our teachers haven't, Alejandra hasn't. We need to immediately get our non-school hours support for our kids back up and running. Our neighboring cities are doing it. Our local pool district is doing it. We must do it. Nothing less than our future depends upon it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. Moving on to Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no comments for this evening. Thanks.
All right, Councilmember Harris, you have the floor.
Let's see if I'm still muted. No, okay, great. So, let's see here. I want to I'm making a mental note of Deputy Mayor Buxton's excellent comments on our proclamation. Our new website, definitely, we need some way to automatically acknowledge these reminder of these proclamations every year. They matter a great deal, and there just has to be a way to make that just bring it to the fore every year. I went last weekend, hung out with the nice people at Coastal Sensing, which I believe Mayor Mahoney is aware of. They are, speaking of waste and ecology, there are, 300,000, the mayor may know more, tires submerged in Puget Sound. Somebody thought it was a grand idea to create artificial tire reefs in the 70s. Your EPA invented that. And so now they go around and they are mapping the underwater terrain in anticipation of the impossible task of lifting 300,000 toxic tires, finding somewhere to put them, and replacing them with healthy, sea life. I spoke with Terry Davis, the representative with Comcast, about our basically, I have received a number of complaints regarding the EBB, and now it's called something else. Basically, low income credit for phones, and he was very gracious in looking into how to basically, there's some plumbing problem, I met Eduardo Mendonça, the former member of our Arts Commission, he has a fabulous group, Show Brazil, and has all kinds of educational programs for kids. You should definitely check him out. He runs this thing called Brazil Fest, August 21st at Seattle Center. It is a wonderful thing for kids, adults, let's see. Oh yeah. So I'm pleased to announce. I'm told that the Des Moines Historical Society will be applying for a grant to scan all of their newspapers. And boy, I tell you, it's when the public is able to have access to, you know, all of these different local papers, it'll really be something. And let's see, two other quick things. I attended the first Flood Control District Advisory of the Year with King County Council member Dave Upthegrove. The grant program has expanded, and hopefully they will be sending information to the city this week, because we have several urban flooding kind of prone areas that will be eligible. And finally, over the next few months, you will have noticed my difficulty speaking, and no, it's not Talk Like a Pirate Day, but if you're a professional fisherman when you're 20, you're gonna have to have implants replaced when you're 60. And so over the course of the summer, you're going to see my teeth move, and it is not something wrong with your screen. And you know, hopefully they'll sort it out after paying a fortune. So that's it.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Pennington.
Thank you. So I had a meeting with the staff today, or not today, but earlier this week, and they gave me an orientation, so I appreciate that, and I got up to speed on several things. Last evening, I attended the Sound Cities Association meeting, of which Deputy Mayor Buxton is a board member, and that's their first meeting that they've had since I think early 2020, so first in-person meeting. And so that was well attended, and listened to King County Executive Dal Constantine speak and deliver a message. That was good stuff. And then I would like to, well, first off, all that got promoted to their director positions, congratulations to each of you. And then I would also like to point out, you know, the work that our police department does. We had on Monday a person that got off a bus and shot a couple of people, and by Monday evening that person was apprehended. And so that's a lot of really good police work, and you know, that's the level of police work and expertise that we have in this city, and we're very fortunate to have our officers that are doing that, and the leadership that we have at the police department. So thank you, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. Moving on to Councilmember Steinmetz.
Oh, thank you very much. I don't have a lot to report. I do want to give congratulations again. Echo what Councilmember Pennington said to everybody that got promoted. I think there are some well-deserved promotions here, and I'm glad to have you on the team. I'd also like to congratulate our police department on doing an excellent job of responding very quickly and very firmly to that shooting on the bus. I think that, you know, certainly response time in getting some of these crimes solved is a direct result of what Chief Thomas has put together with the task force up on Pacific Highway. I think they're just able to respond that much faster. In the long run, that should bring down the crime level up there. And so I really think that's a great thing. I'd also like to say that I'm looking forward to next month actually having committee meeting where we can hash out some of the details of these kinds of proposals. And then I'll have much more to report to you at that point. Otherwise, I've met with a number of individual citizens in Des Moines on various issues, and continue to make myself as available as I can be. Happy to spend my weekend talking to you about the issues in the city. So other than that, nothing more to report. Thank you.
Right. Deputy Mayor Buxton, you have now the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I join with my colleagues in congratulating our staff on their promotions. Well deserved, and looking forward to having the resource. You guys are amazing. And also our police. I am always impressed with their work. So good job, you guys. A couple weeks ago, I attended a great little event that was hosted by the Soundside Chamber of Commerce, which we do not have a Chamber of Commerce in the city of Des Moines, but we collaboratively participate in a chamber with 5 of our Soundside cities down here: SeaTac, Normandy Park, Des Moines, Tukwila. And so the chamber hosted an event where all business people, electeds, and staff came together. And it was these kinds of things are great opportunities to talk about economic development projects in our cities, collaborate about business opportunities. There were several business people that came. So I was there with the mayor, and Eric Lane on our staff was able to attend, representing our economic development opportunities in Des Moines. And it was a good thing. It was one of I think it was the first in-person event that I was able to attend since COVID. So I really appreciated Soundside for hosting that. I as well attended the Sound Cities Association event with Dow as the keynote speaker. He emphasized finding solutions for housing and equity challenges. And actually it was a great representation. Almost all of our council was able to attend. And cities from all over the county were there last night with their electeds and staff members and partners in the community like Comcast, Facebook, members that partner with cities all over the county. So that's a really great opportunity as well. Appreciated that. And that's all I have for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. After hearing the board and committee reports, I need to call one thing out. Councilmember Harris, I need you to do me a favor. When you're receiving complaints, please pass those on to our city clerk, as we're required to do. We should not be contacting these entities ourselves. We approve their contracts and so forth, and it needs to be handled through the city staff and the city manager. With that being said, I think it's worthy we name the names of the promotions. Denise Lathrop, Community Development Director. Nicole Nordholm, we already talked about, Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services Director. And Shannon Kirchberg, Director of Emergency Management and Workplace Safety. This past couple of weeks, yes, they all deserve it. We've got to know them. They do a great job. I got to be on TV and radio for King 5 and Entertainment Tonight, the serious debate about whether it's Des Moines or Des Moines. And I'll just say, as a politician, I played the fence on that one and rode it hard and had a good time. Jim Devers was excellent, and it was a very entertaining thing. He asked me what the translation for Des Moines was, and I told him it was the greatest place in Washington to live. So I got to be a little corny there as well. And then Cairo, same kind of thing. Had a really good time with Rachel Bell, and it was a pleasure. I attended a lot of meetings, but one particular meeting I attended was the retirement of Bill Shepard, a detective in our detective. I think he became sergeant, if I'm not mistaken, in our police force for over 20 years. This gentleman was one of the instrumental people in battling some of the prostitution and other things we had on Pack Highway, and we are forever indebted for his service to the city. A real solid guy, and he was he gave a heart-wrenching speech, and I was touched by it. I attended a lot of other things, but for lack of time, I'm going to leave those alone. Michael asked me for a moment just to make a quick statement, and before I go to the next order of business. With that, I give the floor to you,
Thank
Michael.
you, Mayor. And I want to advise you, Rachel Bell also talked to me, but that's not the reason I wanted to say something. You know, if you go back about 3.5 years for those who've been on council or those who've been watching, we have emphasized succession planning. And we've identified where there potentially could be retirements or opportunities to kind of change the way we do business. And so what you're seeing with Shannon and Nicole and Denise are the results of that process. But it wouldn't be fair to acknowledge them and thank them and wish them all the best. And I know they're going to do an incredible job without acknowledging Susan Cesar, who did such a great job as our strategic and, official. I have no idea what her title is. And but she has done such a great job of both managing the Parks Department, community services, serving as our community development, serving as our SEPA official, helping us with the review and analysis of the SAMP, and helping us with all kinds of land use, economic development, and everything else. So, these are big shoes to fill. I think that we got the right people in the right place, but I have to acknowledge Susan's contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. My camera just quit, but I appreciate those words. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, council will move into a closed session under RCW 42.30.140 paragraph 4 to discuss pending labor negotiations. This closed session will last 30 minutes. At the conclusion of the closed session, council will immediately move into an executive session to discuss potential litigation under RCW 42.30.110 paragraph 1 subparagraph I. This executive session will last 30 minutes. No formal action will be taken after the conclusion of both of the closed and executive session, and council will adjourn the meeting at that time. The next council meeting will be a study session on April 7th at 5 p.m. for city council goal settings. We will be taking a break as we transition over to that, and Bonnie will orchestrate that. With that, the meeting is, do I have a motion for an?
Oh, you have a question.
Oh. Wait a minute. Gene, I'm sorry.
Yes, I've been informed that the executive session is going to involve discussion of the Legacy Foundation. I do have a remote interest and I will be recusing myself from that session.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right, with that.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're thinking the same thing, but we need to move to extend.
Oh, yes, yes. So do I have a motion to extend for 1 hour?
1 hour.
Councilmember Steinmetz?
No.
Are you making the motion? Yes. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll give Councilmember Harris a second. With all those in favor, raise your right hand. Seeing 7-0. The motion is extended for 1 hour for the closed and executive session. And with that, we'll move to the executive session. I don't think I need to knock the gavel or move out, right?